Hey guys, glad you could join. Tonight, we're exploring the strange and terrifying world of medieval trial by ordeal. This was a system of justice where, if there was no evidence, the court would simply ask God for a verdict, usually by seeing if you survived being burned by a red-hot piece of iron or drowned in a river. It was a brutal, high-stakes appeal to a divine court of last resort. But first, it's time to find your own sanctuary from the day's trials. Settle into your bed, let your muscles unwind, and feel the comfort of your pillow. If these calm tales from the brutal side of history help you find your rest, a simple like is always appreciated. And please tell us in the comments where you're listening from as you get ready to drift off. Ready? Take a slow, deep breath and gently release it. Good. We are travelling to a small, muddy village where the line between law and magic is hopelessly blurred. The year is 1180, the place is England, and you have just been accused of a crime you did not commit. The accusation is as petty as it is dangerous. A silver brooch, a valuable item belonging to the village reeve, the local official appointed by the lord of the manor, has gone missing. And your neighbour, a man named Oswald, with whom you have been feuding for years over the precise location of a fence, points his finger at you. He claims he saw you lurking near the Reeves cottage the night the brooch disappeared. It is a lie, a piece of malicious opportunism designed to settle an old score. But in the close-knit, gossip-fueled world of a medieval village, an accusation is a sticky thing. There are no witnesses to the actual theft. There is no evidence. There is only Oswald's word against yours. But that is enough. You are summoned to the manorial court, which is not a grand stone courthouse, but the great draughty hall of the local lord's manor house. The lord, a stern-faced Norman knight, presides over the proceedings, his primary interest not in justice, but in maintaining order and collecting the fines that are the main product of the legal system. The trial is a simple and deeply frustrating affair. It is a shouting match of oaths. Oswald swears on a holy relic, a splinter of bone from a long-dead saint, that you are the thief. You, in turn, swear on the same relic that you are innocent. It is a sacred standoff. To try and tip the scales, you both bring in oath helpers, a feature of the old Germanic law that still holds sway here. You bring a half-dozen of your most trusted friends and relatives to swear that you are an honest and God-fearing man, incapable of such a crime. But Oswald, who is more influential in the village, brings an equal number of his own supporters to swear the same about him. The court is deadlocked. Your truth and his lie have been given equal weight. With no earthly way to determine the truth, the lord of the manor grows impatient. He confers in a low whisper with the village priest, Father Thomas. When he turns back to you, his face is grim. Since this matter cannot be settled by the testimony of men, he declares, his voice echoing in the smoky hall, it must be given over to the judgment of Almighty God. A gasp goes through the small crowd. You feel a cold, sickening dread wash over you. You have just been sentenced to trial by ordeal. Specifically, the Reeve suggests, the ordeal of hot iron. Your guilt or innocence will be determined by a 1 pound piece of glowing red-hot metal. The logic of the ordeal, as the priest explains it, is a terrifying and absolute form of faith. It is believed that God, who is all-knowing and all-powerful, will not suffer an innocent person to be harmed. He will intervene directly in the physical world, performing a miracle to reveal the truth. If you are innocent, God will protect your hand from the searing heat of the iron, or he will miraculously heal the wound in a few short days. If you are guilty, he will stand aside and allow the fire to do its righteous work, marking your flesh with the undeniable stain of your sin. It is a system of justice that bypasses the fallible judgment of men and appeals directly to the highest court in the universe. It is also, you reflect with a sense of rising panic, a system that seems to involve you getting horribly burned regardless of the outcome. It's the medieval equivalent of settling a legal dispute by asking someone to catch a falling anvil. The process is the punishment. You are led from the hall, your mind reeling. You have 3 days to prepare your soul for a very direct and very painful conversation with your Maker. You are immediately taken into the custody of the church. The trial by ordeal is not a civil matter. It is a sacrament, a sacred religious ceremony, and it requires spiritual preparation. For the next 3 days, you are to live in a small, cold cell attached to the village church, under the direct supervision of Father Thomas. This is a period of intense and mandatory spiritual purification. Your goal is to make your soul as clean as possible, so that God will be more inclined to look favourably upon you. Your life becomes a simple, grueling routine of piety and penance. Your diet is reduced to a small piece of bread and a cup of water each day. You are to fast, to mortify your flesh, to empty yourself of all worldly concerns. The majority of your waking hours are spent on your knees, on the cold stone floor, praying. You pray to God the Father. You pray to Jesus Christ and to the Virgin Mary. You pray to every saint you can think of, especially St. Lawrence, who was famously martyred by being roasted on a gridiron, and who you hope might be particularly sympathetic to your current heat-related predicament. You must attend every Mass, every service. Father Thomas anoints you with holy water and blesses you with incense. He hears your confession again and again, urging you to unburden your soul of any sin, no matter how small, that might displease God and prejudice your case. The psychological pressure is immense. The 3 days of fasting and sleep-deprived prayer leave you feeling weak, light-headed, and strangely detached from reality. You are being deliberately broken down, physically and mentally, to prepare you for the divine judgment to come. It is a period of profound spiritual terror, where every doubt, every stray thought, feels like a potential nail in your coffin. On the morning of the 3rd day, the trial is to take place. The entire village and people from the surrounding hamlets have gathered. The ordeal is a major public event, a piece of religious theatre, and no one wants to miss it. You are led from your cell into the main body of the church. The atmosphere is a strange mixture of a solemn religious service and a boisterous public fair. People are whispering, gossiping, laying informal wagers on the outcome. Your accuser, Oswald, is there, looking smug and pious. You are the centre of it all, a lonely, terrified figure in a simple penitent's tunic. The church, normally a place of sanctuary and peace, has been transformed. It is now a courtroom, a laboratory for a divine experiment. The space before the altar has been cleared. In the centre, a small brazier of hot coals has been set up, its heat a shimmering, visible presence in the cool air of the church. Next to it, on a small table, is a piece of iron, about a foot long, with a loop at one end. It is a simple, unassuming object, but it holds your entire life in its metallic heart. Father Thomas, dressed in his full liturgical vestments, begins the long and solemn ceremony. He sprinkles the church, the crowd, and you with holy water to banish any demonic influences that might try to interfere with God's judgment. He ascends to the pulpit and delivers a powerful and deeply unsettling sermon on the nature of divine justice, on the absolute impossibility of hiding a sin from the all-seeing eyes of God. His words are aimed directly at you. It is your last chance to confess. To undergo the ordeal with a lie on your soul, he thunders, is to invite not just a burn, but eternal damnation. Your silence is your final plea of innocence. The priest then proceeds to the ordeal itself. He raises his hands over the piece of iron and begins a long chanted prayer in Latin. "Bless, O Lord, this iron," he intones, "that it may be a revealer of truth. Let this metal be heated by your fire, and let it distinguish the just from the unjust." He is consecrating the iron, transforming it from a simple lump of metal into a holy instrument, a conduit for the will of God. He then takes the iron with a long pair of tongs and places it into the heart of the glowing coals in the brazier. The ceremony has begun. Now you can only wait and watch as the iron begins to glow, a dull red at first, then a brighter, more malevolent cherry red. The iron is now glowing a bright, angry orange. It seems to pulse with a living heat. The time has come. The priest, using his tongs, lifts the iron from the fire and places it on the altar. He calls you forward. You walk the few steps from the pews to the altar on trembling legs. The entire church is silent, every eye upon you. You are acutely aware of the smell of the hot metal, a sharp, clean, and terrifying scent. The priest recites the final, formal charge. "I adjure you, by the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost," he says, his voice echoing in the silence. "If you are guilty of this crime, do not dare to take this holy iron in your hand. But if you are innocent, take it, and may God, the just judge, protect you." Your mind is a storm of fear and prayer. This is it, the moment of judgment. You look at your hand, the hand that has tilled the soil, that has held your children. It seems pale and fragile, a thing of soft flesh and delicate bone. You look at the glowing, incandescent bar of metal. You extend your hand. The priest, with his tongs, lifts the iron and places it in your palm. The pain is instantaneous and absolute. It is a white-hot, searing agony that seems to consume your entire being. The smell of your own burning flesh fills your nostrils. Your first instinct is to scream, to drop the iron, to run. But you cannot. That would be an admission of guilt. With a strength you did not know you possessed, you close your fingers around the metal bar. You turn, and you begin the longest journey of your life. You must carry the iron for 9 feet, 3 paces of the Trinity. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. You drop the iron, which clangs loudly on the stone floor. A collective gasp goes through the crowd. The ordeal itself is over, but the trial has only just begun. The moment the iron leaves your hand, Father Thomas is at your side. The ordeal is not about whether you get burned. You always get burned. The divine miracle, if it is to come, is in the healing. The priest takes your seared, blistered hand and inspects it briefly. Then he immediately binds it in a long strip of clean linen, which has been consecrated and soaked in holy water. He covers the bandage with a final cloth, and on a knot he places a large dollop of soft wax, which he impresses with the seal of the church. Your hand is now a sealed vessel, a sacred experiment. You are forbidden from touching the bandage, from treating the wound with any poultice or salve. To do so would be to interfere with God's work. You must leave the healing or the festering entirely in his hands. You are then led from the church back to your small cell, and you begin the second, and in many ways, more difficult ordeal, the 3 days of waiting. The pain is a constant throbbing presence, a fiery torment that makes sleep impossible. But the physical agony is nothing compared to the psychological torture. Your entire future, your life and your reputation, is contained within that sealed bandage. Every throb of pain Every spike of fever feels like a divine condemnation. Your mind becomes a battleground of faith and fear. You pray with a new, desperate intensity. You beg God to show mercy, to give the sign of your innocence. But doubt, like a serpent, whispers in your ear. What if God is not listening? What if you have some other unconfessed sin on your soul for which he is now punishing you? What if the priest did not perform the ritual correctly? The 3 days stretch into an eternity of pain, of anxiety, of a desperate, sleepless, and obsessive focus on the sealed, hidden wound that is the sole arbiter of your fate. On the morning of the 3rd day, your wait is over. You are brought from your cell back to the church, where the village has once again assembled. You are weak from the pain, the lack of food, and the sheer, shredding stress of the past week. You are brought before the altar, and Father Thomas, with a solemn and theatrical gravity, takes a small knife and breaks the wax seal. The entire church seems to be holding its breath. He begins to slowly, carefully unwind the linen bandage. This is the moment of the verdict. The state of the wound will be read like a holy text. There are 2 possibilities. If the wound is festering, if it is swollen with pus, oozing, and showing the dark colours of infection, it is a clear sign that God has judged you to be guilty. The purifying fire has done its work, but your sinful body has corrupted the wound. Your guilt is manifest. You will be declared a perjurer, an outcast, and you will be taken to be fined, flogged, or hanged. But if the wound is clean, if the burn is healing without infection, if it shows signs of what the law calls being clean, then it is a miracle. It is a sign that God has intervened, that he has protected your innocent flesh from the natural consequences of the burn. The priest finishes unwrapping the bandage. You look down at your hand. The burn is a terrible, angry red, blistered and raw, but the flesh around it is not swollen. There is no pus. It is a clean wound. A murmur of awe goes through the crowd. Father Thomas raises his hands. He is clean, he declares. God has proclaimed his innocence. You are overcome with a wave of relief so powerful it almost brings you to your knees. You are innocent. You are free. You have been to hell and back, and you have been vindicated. Your neighbour Oswald shrinks back into the crowd, his face a mask of disbelief and fear. God has spoken. Trial by ordeal was a system of justice born from a world of profound faith and profound uncertainty. It was a desperate appeal to a higher power, a way of forcing the hand of God when the devices of men had failed. The brutal reality was a terrifying and arbitrary ritual, a form of judicial theatre where the innocent were forced to suffer alongside the guilty, their fates decided not by evidence, but by the unpredictable science of how flesh reacts to fire and water. It was a system that, for centuries, placed the burden of proof not on the accuser, but on the accused, and trusted that the truth could be found in the blistering and the healing of a human hand. When you see a beautiful Roman mosaic in a museum, it's easy to be captivated by the artistry. We see stunning scenes of mythology, gladiators, and intricate patterns that have survived for 2,000 years. We imagine a Roman artist, a creative genius, carefully placing each stone. But the brutal reality is that these incredible stone carpets were rarely the work of a single artist. They were the product of a grueling, anonymous, and often slave-driven industry, created through months of backbreaking labour that was more construction project than fine art. You are about to become a craftsman in a Roman workshop on the sun-scorched coast of North Africa around the year 200 AD. You're about to create a masterpiece, but first you have to break a lot of rocks. Your story begins in the dust and the noise of a large mosaic workshop in the bustling port city of Carthage. This is not a tranquil artist's studio. It's a loud, industrious, open-air yard that is part factory, part construction site. The air is thick with a fine white powder that coats your tongue and stings your eyes. The sharp, percussive clack, clack, clack of hammers striking stone is the constant soundtrack to your life. You are a tessellarius, a mosaic craftsman. You are not a famous artist. You are a skilled labourer, and your hands, calloused and scarred, are your only asset. Today, there is a stir of excitement and anxiety in the workshop. A very important potential client is visiting. He is a dominus, a local magnate who has made a vast fortune shipping grain and olive oil to Rome. He is building a new villa on the coast, a monument to his own wealth and success, and he needs floors that will make his guests sick with envy. Your master, the Pictor, the head of the workshop, and the only one who gets to be called a true artist, is laying out the full treatment for him. Slaves bring wine. The master unrolls expensive scrolls of parchment, showing the patron the workshop's pattern books. You and the other low-ranking craftsmen keep your heads down, pretending to work, but you are listening. The dominus is loud, arrogant, and dismissive. He waves a jewelled hand at a design of the 9 muses. Trite, he says. Everyone has the muses. He points to a complex geometric pattern. Too simple. I want something to talk about. The master, ever the salesman, unrolls a new design. Perhaps Dominus? A scene from the amphitheatre? A famous gladiator? Or a thrilling beast hunt? This gets the patron's attention. He wants action. He wants spectacle. He wants a floor that tells a story. His story. The story of a powerful man who commands the world. They haggle over the price, a sum of money that you could not earn in a dozen lifetimes. They discuss materials, not just local marble and limestone, but exotic glass from Alexandria for the blues and greens, and rich yellow marble imported from Numidia. The patron wants the best, and he is willing to pay for it. A deal is struck. The dominus sweeps out, leaving a cloud of expensive perfume and quiet dread in his wake. The commission is huge. The work will be difficult, and the client will be demanding. The master turns to you and the rest of the crew. There is no triumphant speech, just a simple order. The work begins tomorrow. And it begins not with art, but with brute physical labour. The dream of creating a stunning mosaic floor begins not with a sketch, but with the raw, unglamorous reality of stone. Before you can create a picture of a graceful goddess or a charging lion, you must first acquire the colours. And in your world, the colours are buried in the earth. The day after the commission is secured, you are sent out from the relative comfort of the city workshop to the harsh, sun-baked quarries that dot the North African landscape. You are part of a team of labourers, a mix of low-paid workers and slaves, whose job it is to harvest the palette for the master's vision. The work is brutal. The sun is a merciless hammer beating down on your back from a cloudless sky. You work in a limestone quarry, a great white wound in the earth that reflects the light with a blinding intensity. Your job is to help extract the stone. You use iron wedges and heavy mallets, driving the wedges into cracks in the rock face, slowly, painstakingly splitting off large, rough blocks. The sound of metal on stone rings in your ears. The physical exertion is immense. Your muscles scream in protest. The dust, a fine choking powder, fills your lungs and coats your sweat-soaked skin, turning it into a gritty paste. This is just for the local colours, the whites, the creams, the pale yellows of the limestone. Other teams are sent further afield. to another quarry for the reddish clay that will be fired into terracotta tiles, to yet another for the dark, almost black stone needed for the outlines. This is the bulk of the mosaic, the cheap, plentiful material that will fill the vast spaces of the floor. But the Dominus wants more. He wants to show off, so the master has arranged for shipments of exotic materials to be brought to the workshop. Weeks later, heavy carts arrive at the workshop, laden with the treasures of the empire. There are blocks of deep green marble from Greece and rich blood-red porphyry from Egypt. Most precious of all are the slabs of coloured glass, called smolto. They come in vibrant blues, greens and golds that stone alone can never replicate. This glass is incredibly expensive and will be used sparingly, reserved for the most important details to make the mosaic glitter and shine. You look at the massive pile of raw material now filling the workshop yard. Hundreds of tons of rock and glass, quarried, transported and paid for. All of this effort, all of this backbreaking labour, just to create the raw pigment for a picture you haven't even begun to make. The scale of the undertaking is immense, and you are just a single aching part of it. The mountains of raw stone have been delivered to the workshop. Now, the second stage of the grueling, unartistic preparation begins. The massive, irregular blocks of marble, limestone and terracotta must be transformed into the tiny, uniform cubes that are the fundamental building blocks of your art. These cubes are called tesserae, and for the next several weeks, your entire world will shrink to the task of creating them. You are a cube maker. It is perhaps the most tedious, repetitive, and mind-numbing job in the entire process. You sit on a low stool in the yard day after day. In front of you is a large, solid block of wood with an iron chisel, the hardy, embedded in it, blade up. You take a piece of stone, a little bigger than your fist, and a heavy, sharp-edged hammer, and you begin the rhythm that will dominate your waking hours. Clack! You strike the stone against the hardy, scoring a line. Clack! You turn it and score another. Clack! Clack! You work your way around the stone, your movements economical and practiced. Then, with a final sharp blow, the stone splits, and a smaller, rougher cube falls away. You pick it up, trim the edges with your hammer, and toss it into a wooden tray. Then you pick up another piece of stone, and you do it again. You do this thousands of times a day. Your world is reduced to the sharp report of the hammer, the feeling of the stone's resistance, the sight of the growing pile of cubes. Your hands are a wreck. Despite the calluses, you have a dozen small cuts from the sharp edges of the stone. A misplaced hammer blow means a smashed thumb, an injury you must work through because there is no sick pay. The worst part is the dust. It's a constant, unavoidable cloud. You tie a cloth over your mouth and nose, but it does little good. You know the older workers, the men who have been doing this for decades. You hear their rasping, painful coughs. You know that the dust you are breathing is slowly turning your lungs to stone. Each colour must be processed separately. 1 week you work on brilliant white marble, the next on dull red terracotta. You create piles of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of these little stone cubes. Each one is a single pixel in the final masterpiece. As you work, you sort them into different trays by colour and shade. This tray is for the creamy white, this one for the bone white, this one for the white with a slight grey vein. You are creating a painter's palette, but your paints are solid rock. It is a slow, arduous and deeply uncreative process. You are a human machine, turning big rocks into little rocks, all day, every day. After what feels like an eternity of making cubes, the day finally comes to move the operation to the job site. You and the rest of the workshop crew, craftsmen, apprentices, and slaves, load up carts with the countless trays of tesserae, bags of lime, tools, and supplies. The journey takes you out of the bustling city and along the coast to where the Dominus's new villa is rising. It is a spectacular location, perched on a cliff overlooking the deep blue of the Mediterranean. The sea breeze is a welcome relief from the dusty air of the workshop, but you are not here to enjoy the view. You are here to work. The room you will be working in is currently just a gaping space with earth and sand for a floor. Your first job is not to create art, but to perform the heavy, dirty work of a construction labourer. The success of a mosaic depends entirely on the quality of its foundation. If the base is not perfectly stable, level, and waterproof, the mosaic will shift, crack, and ultimately disintegrate. The Romans, being master engineers, have a robust, multi-layered system for this, and you are at the bottom of the labour pyramid that builds it. First comes the statumen. You and the other labourers haul in large fist-sized stones, laying them down to create a solid, level base about a foot deep. Then comes the rudus. You mix a coarse concrete, a combination of lime mortar and rubble, broken bricks, stones and pottery shards. You dump this over the statumen in a thick layer, spreading it and tamping it down with heavy wooden tools until it is compact and even. It's grueling, back-breaking work under the hot sun. Your body aches and you're covered in a gritty layer of sweat and cement. After the rudus has had time to set, the next layer is applied. This is the nucleus, a finer mortar made from pounded brick and lime. This layer is applied with more care, smoothed and levelled with long wooden floats. This is the bed in which the tesserae will actually be set. The final setting bed, a thin layer of even finer mortar, will only be applied in small sections at a time, just before the cubes are laid. You stand back, wiping sweat from your brow, and look at the floor. It has taken days of intense physical labour to create this perfectly flat, perfectly stable, perfectly boring grey surface. It is a masterpiece of engineering. Now, at last, the art can begin. The foundation is laid, a perfect blank canvas of grey mortar. Now, the workshop hierarchy becomes crystal clear. You and the other craftsmen stand aside. The master, the pictor, enters the room as if stepping onto a stage. He is no longer the harried salesman or the tough workshop boss. He is the artist, and this is his moment. With him is a senior apprentice carrying scrolls and pots of pigment. The master unrolls the detailed design that he has been working on for weeks, the one approved by the Dominus. It is a grand, complex scene. The god Neptune in his chariot, surrounded by a swirling chaos of sea creatures, mythical and real, all framed by a series of elaborate and geometric borders. The master now begins the process of transferring this grand design onto the floor. He uses a long rod and charcoal-dusted string to snap perfectly straight grid lines across the entire surface of the nucleus. This grid will allow him to scale up his small drawing to the massive size of the room. Then, with a lump of charcoal and a brush dipped in red ochre, he begins to draw. This freehand sketch on the mortar bed is called the synopia. He doesn't look at the other workers. He is in a state of deep concentration, his hand moving with a speed and confidence that leaves you in awe. You watch as the empty grey space is populated with powerful flowing lines. The powerful torso of Neptune, the rearing heads of the hippocampus horses that pull his chariot, the sinuous coils of a sea serpent. He works quickly, capturing the energy and movement of the scene. He is not just drawing outlines, he is indicating areas of light and shadow, suggesting the flow of water, the turn of a muscle. His drawing is alive. This is the difference between you and him. You are a craftsman, skilled with your hands, capable of executing a task perfectly. He is an artist, capable of creating a world from nothing. Your job, you realize, is not to be creative. It is to be a human instrument. You and your fellow tessellari are like a set of brushes, each with a different colour, which the master will use to paint his picture. He has created the vision. Your role is simply to fill it in, cube by tiny cube. You look at the sprawling red drawing covering the floor. The scale of it is overwhelming. It will take months of painstaking labour to transform this sketch into a carpet of stone. The master finishes his final flourish, throws down his brush, and nods. The blueprint is complete. The real work is about to begin. And it starts with the most boring part. The glorious drawing of Neptune and his sea monsters covers the floor, a tantalizing promise of the beautiful artwork to come. But you are not going to start on the exciting parts. You are not going to render the glint in a dolphin's eye or the muscles on a triton's arm. No, the work begins at the edges, with the border. Every grand Roman mosaic is framed by intricate borders, sometimes multiple layers of them, and this is the work assigned to the apprentices and the lower-ranking craftsmen. This is your job. The master has already laid out the design in the synopia, a complex series of interlocking geometric patterns, a wave crest pattern, a guilloche or braided rope pattern, and a simple black and white checkerboard. A thin layer of the final setting mortar is applied to a long, narrow section along one wall. Now you get to work. You kneel on wooden planks laid across the floor to distribute your weight. Beside you are the trays of tesserae, in your case just black and white. And you begin. You pick up a single white cube and press it into the damp mortar, following the master's red line. Then a black one, then another white one. The work is methodical, precise, and profoundly monotonous. Your knees ache. Your back is a column of fire from crouching in the same position for hours on end. You measure your progress, not in feet, but in inches. You must ensure the spacing is perfect, the lines are straight, the depth is consistent. A small hammer and a block of wood are used to gently tap the newly laid sections, ensuring they are all level with one another. It is a slow, painstaking process. You are essentially creating a vast, complex piece of tile work, one tiny square at a time. This is the reality behind the grandeur. Hours and hours of what feels like mindless repetition. You have a certain amount of time before the mortar in your section dries. You must work quickly, but without sacrificing precision. The master walks the perimeter of the room, observing the work of all the craftsmen. His eye misses nothing. A poorly spaced line, a wobbly curve. He points it out with the end of a stick, and you must use a small tool to pry the offending tesserae out and reset them. There is no room for error. The frame must be perfect. The geometric precision of the border is what creates the illusion of order and control. A perfect frame for the chaotic, mythological scene at the centre. You look at the vast length of the wall ahead of you, and then at the few inches of braided pattern you have completed. It feels like an impossible task. But you take another cube, and you press it into place. And then another. And another. After days, perhaps even weeks, the borders are complete. The room is now framed by a magnificent, mathematically perfect carpet of geometric patterns. Now, at last, you move to the main event, the figurative panels. The master divides the floor into sections, He assigns you and the other skilled craftsmen to different parts of the grand scene. You are not given a heroic god or a beautiful narrated to work on. You are assigned to a less critical but still challenging section, the muscular, coiling tail of a great sea serpent. This is a step up from the border. It requires more skill, more artistry. A fresh layer of setting mortar is applied over the asterisk synopia in your section. You have a wider palette of tesserae to work with now, not just black and white, but a half-dozen shades of green, grey and blue. Your task is to follow the master's drawing, but also to give the serpent's tail a sense of form and movement. This is achieved through a technique called andamento. You don't just lay the cubes in straight, grid-like lines. You lay them in flowing courses that follow the contours of the form. You set the rows of tesserae to mimic the curve of a muscle, the sweep of a fin. It's like creating a contour map with stone cubes. You also learn to play with light by setting each individual tessera at a slightly different angle. You can control how it reflects the light that will eventually flood the room. Some facets will catch the light and sparkle, others will be in shadow. This creates a shimmering, vibrant effect, making the finished mosaic seem alive, rippling like the surface of water. The master has shown you how, but it is a skill that takes years to perfect. You work with intense concentration, one hand selecting the right shade of green, the other pressing it firmly into the mortar. The master is a constant hovering presence. He patrols the floor, scrutinizing every craftsman's work. He stops at your section, his shadow falling over you. You hold your breath. He studies your work for a long, silent moment. "No," he says, pointing with his stick. "The curve here is too flat. It has no power." With a sigh, he kneels, takes a tool from his belt, and pries out an entire section of your work. Hours of your painstaking labour. He then takes the tesserae himself and, with a few deft movements, resets them, creating a more dynamic, powerful curve. "Like that," he says, without looking at you, and moves on. The shame is hot, but the lesson is learned. You are not just filling in a drawing, you are sculpting with stone, and you still have much to learn. While you and the other tessellarii labour on the main body of the floor, the most important part of the mosaic is being created elsewhere. This is the emblemext, the central masterpiece panel. It is the heart of the entire composition, the focal point that will draw every visitor's eye. For this project, it is a stunningly detailed portrait of the god Neptune himself. This panel is not made on site. The level of detail required is too great. It is created back in the controlled environment of the workshop, on a shallow tray of terracotta or marble. And this is the work of the pictor alone. This is where he demonstrates the full, breathtaking extent of his skill. The technique used for the emblema is different. It is called opus vermiculatum, which means worm-like work. The name comes from the way the tiny tesserae are laid in winding worm-like lines that follow the contours of the image with incredible precision. The tesserae themselves are minuscule, some only a few millimeters across. The master has to cut these himself, using finer tools to create tiny, specialized shapes. This allows him to achieve a level of detail that is almost photographic. He can render the subtle shadow under an eye, the glint of light on a wet beard, the individual threads in a piece of golden fabric. You are sent back to the workshop one day to fetch more supplies, and you see him at work on it. The difference between his task and yours is night and day. You are working with stone cubes the size of your thumbnail. His are like grains of rice. He is, in effect, painting with stone, using hundreds of different shades of colour to create smooth gradients and lifelike textures. He uses tweezers to place the tiniest pieces. He uses precious cubes of blue and green glass to make Neptune's eyes sparkle with divine power. This is not craft, it is high art. It is the reason he is the master, and you are the labourer. When the emblemar is complete, it is a masterpiece in its own right, a portable mosaic. It is carefully transported to the villa. A space has been left in the centre of the floor, and the master supervises as his precious panel is lowered into place, set perfectly into the surrounding mortar. The effect is stunning. The large, somewhat coarse work of the main floor, the opus tessellatum, suddenly has a jewel-like heart. The eye is immediately drawn to the incredible detail and realism of the central panel. It is a brilliant trick, concentrating all the most expensive materials and the highest level of skill in one spot to create the maximum impact. It is a stark visual reminder of the hierarchy of the Roman world, both in the workshop and in society at large. Months have passed. The last tessera has been pressed into place. The entire sprawling floor is a sea of stone cubes, their colours still dull, the surface uneven. The room is a mess of wooden planks, discarded tools, and dried mortar. But the most grueling work is complete. Now begins the final stage, the process that will transform this dusty construction site into a gleaming work of art. The first step is to fill in the gaps. A wet grout, a mixture of lime and powdered marble, is sloshed across the entire floor. You and the others work it into every tiny crack and crevice between the tesserae, ensuring the whole surface is locked together into a single, solid sheet. When the grout has partially dried, the truly transformative work begins, the polishing. This is another physically demanding, tedious job. You get down on your hands and knees with large abrasive stones like terracotta blocks or chunks of sandstone and water. And you begin to grind the surface of the floor. For days you scour back and forth, the friction slowly wearing down any high spots, smoothing the entire mosaic into a single level plane. The work is exhausting, and a slurry of gritty coloured mud covers everything. But as you work, something magical starts to happen. The grinding process slices through the top layer of the stone and glass, revealing the true, vibrant colour within. Finally, the floor is washed one last time. Buckets of clean water are poured over the surface, washing away the last of the grout and stone dust. And for the first time, you see what you have made. The colours explode. The water makes the stones gleam as if they were wet jewels. The whites are brilliant. The reds are deep and earthy. The greens and blues of the glass tesserae sparkle like the nearby sea. The figures of the gods and monsters seem to move and writhe on the floor, alive with a light and energy you could never have imagined. Just then, the Dominus arrives for the final inspection. He strides into the room, his sandals slapping on the newly polished surface. He is silent for a long time, his eyes taking in the grand spectacle. A slow smile spreads across his face. He is delighted. He clasps the master, the Pictor, on the shoulder, praising his genius, his vision. He promises him a handsome bonus. You and the dozens of other craftsmen covered in grime, your bodies aching from months of labour, stand silently in the background. The patron does not see you. You are as invisible as the foundation buried beneath his feet. You have created a masterpiece that will last for millennia. But your part in its story is over. You simply gather your tools and move on to the next job. Your name and your struggle destined to be forgotten, buried under the weight of stone and time. When we picture the Vikings, we usually think of bearded, axe-wielding raiders, driven by nothing more than a lust for plunder and a glorious death. We see them as the embodiment of chaotic, brute force. But the brutal reality is that behind the berserker stereotype was a society obsessed with law, honour, and a surprisingly democratic system of justice. They had courts, they had laws, they had juries. But they also believed that the best way to resolve a legal dispute could still, very easily, involve a very large axe. You are about to become a farmer in 10th century Iceland. Your neighbour has wronged you, and in a world without police, without prisons, you're about to discover that Viking justice is not something you are given. It's something you have to make for yourself, at the great annual assembly they call the Thing. Your story doesn't begin in a courtroom, but in the damp, green expanse of your own land. It is a morning in late spring, and the air smells of wet earth and the faint salt of the sea. You are a carl, a free farmer, a man who owns his land, his longhouse, and his livestock. You are not a great chieftain, but you are your own master. And this morning, that mastery has been challenged. You stand at the edge of your hayfield, the one that borders the land of your neighbour, Eric the short-tempered, and you feel a hot knot of anger tighten in your gut. The boundary marker, a large ancient stone piled with smaller rocks, has been moved. Not by a little. It has been shifted a good 30 paces into your field. Eric has stolen a strip of your best grazing land, land that will feed your sheep through the coming winter. In your world, this is no small matter. Land is life, and a man's honour is tied to his land. To allow this theft to stand is to announce to the world that you are weak, that you are a man who can be pushed around. There are no police to call. There is no government office to file a complaint with. The law is a living, breathing thing, and it requires you to be its agent. Justice will not happen unless you, personally, set it in motion. You go back to your longhouse and gather your kin, your 2 grown sons, your brother, and a handful of loyal farmhands. You tell them what has happened. Their faces harden. This is an insult to the whole family. The first step is the summons. You cannot simply show up at the Thing and complain. The law has rules, rituals that must be followed perfectly. You and your witnesses, your sons and your brother, march across the field to Eric's farm. You find him outside his longhouse, sharpening an axe, a smirk already on his face. This is the most dangerous moment. He is a proud man, and you are publicly accusing him. You must perform the summons exactly as the law prescribes. You call your witnesses to hear. You state your name, your father's name. You state Eric's name. You name the charge, the theft of your land. And you summon him to answer for this crime at the upcoming Althing, the great assembly of all Iceland. You must speak the words clearly, without a single mistake. A slip of the tongue could invalidate the entire case. The air is thick with unspoken violence. Eric spits on the ground, but he does not deny the summons. To do so would make him an outlaw on the spot. He accepts. The first move in this legal battle has been made. A few weeks later, you lock the door to your longhouse, leaving your wife and daughters to manage the farm. You and your sons, your brother and your witnesses, all armed and carrying provisions for the journey, set out on the long road to the Thingvellir, the Assembly Plains. Attending the Thing is not just a legal obligation. It's one of the great events of the year. For 2 weeks every summer, the law requires every free farmer and chieftain to attend or send a representative. It is a mass migration, a national pilgrimage. The journey itself takes over a week. You travel on foot and with sturdy Icelandic horses, following the rough tracks that pass for roads. The landscape is immense, volcanic, and strangely beautiful. You travel past vast moss-covered lava fields, their dark, twisted shapes like a frozen sea. You ford glacial rivers, the water so cold it feels like 1,000 needles on your skin. You see the great white caps of the ice fields gleaming in the distance. This is a journey that connects you to your land and to your people. As you travel, you are not alone. Other families from your district join the trail. Men you see only once a year become your travelling companions. It's a slow-moving caravan of farmers, merchants, and chieftains with their armed retinues. At night, you make camp. Large fires are lit, and the smell of cooking lamb and fish fills the air. It's a time for catching up on news from other parts of the island. Who is married? Who has died? Who has returned from a profitable raiding voyage to Ireland with silver and slaves? Marriages are arranged on these journeys. Business deals are struck. Alliances are forged and tested. It's a vibrant, mobile community, a whole society on the move. You and your sons use this time to rehearse your case. You go over the wording of the summons, the oaths you will have to swear, the testimony of your witnesses. Everything must be perfect. You know that Eric and his family are travelling on a different route, and they will be doing the same. This legal battle will not be a quiet affair between two men. It will be a public performance, and the entire nation will be the audience. The journey is long and tiring, but as you get closer to the Thingvellir, a sense of anticipation builds in the air. You are approaching the heart of your nation, the place where the law is spoken, and the fate of men is decided. After many days of travel, you crest a ridge and see it below you, the Thingvellir. It is not a city or a town, it is a place. A dramatic, natural amphitheatre carved by the earth itself. The plains are split by a massive tectonic rift, a great dark scar of volcanic rock called the Almanagja. The Uxará River flows through the plain, its waters cold and clear, before tumbling over a waterfall. And on these plains, a temporary city has sprung into existence. This is the site of the Althing, the oldest parliament in the world. As you descend into the valley, you are absorbed into a chaotic, vibrant sea of humanity. Thousands of people from every corner of Iceland are here. The air is a thick soup of smells. The wood smoke from hundreds of campfires. The aroma of roasting meat and brewing ale. The sour tang of unwashed bodies. The damp, earthy scent of the turf walls of the temporary shelters. A whole town of these shelters, called Buda, has been erected. Each chieftain and significant farmer has a designated spot where they build their booth each year. A low wall of turf and stone with a timber frame and a woolen cloth roof. This will be your home for the next 2 weeks. The noise is a constant rolling murmur. Men are shouting greetings, haggling over wares and arguing politics. Merchants have set up stalls selling everything from fine English wool to Norwegian iron tools. A blacksmith's hammer rings out. Somewhere, a poet, a skald, is reciting a dramatic saga to an enraptured audience. It is a festival, a marketplace, a family reunion, and a political summit all rolled into one. It is loud, it is crowded, and it is more than a little intimidating. Your personal dispute with Eric feels very small in the midst of all this, but you know that dramas like yours are the very reason this place exists. You find the plot of land assigned to your family's booth and begin to set up camp. Your sons and brother rebuild the turf walls while you unload your supplies. You watch the people go by. You see powerful chieftains, the Godar, striding through the crowd with their households of heavily armed followers, their cloaks pinned with expensive silver brooches. You see your opponent, Eric, setting up his own booth not far from yours. He meets your gaze across the crowded field, and his expression is one of pure defiance. There will be no easy resolution here. You are in the heart of the Viking world, a place of immense energy and barely concealed tension. The festival is in full swing, but you are here for law. And law, you know, is just a civilized form of war. In the chaotic world of the Thing, you cannot simply represent yourself. The law is a labyrinth of complex procedures, poetic formulas, and unwritten rules. To navigate it, you need an expert. More importantly, you need power on your side. In this society, the law doesn't just care about what is true. It cares about who is making the claim. So, your first and most crucial task is to secure the support of your local chieftain, your Godi. He is a powerful man, part priest, part politician, and, for your purposes, part lawyer and legal sponsor. You make your way to the Godi's booth. It is larger than the others, and a dozen armed men, his personal household guard, stand watch outside. You are granted entry. Inside it is dark and smoky. The chieftain, a great bear of a man named Thorstein, is sitting on a carved wooden chair, drinking ale from a silver-banded horn. He is talking with other important men from your district. You wait patiently, respectfully, until he acknowledges you. You bow your head and begin to state your business. This is not a simple transaction. You must persuade him. You are one of the farmers sworn to him, a Thingman. And in return for your support in politics and warfare, he is obligated to represent you in legal matters. But his support is not guaranteed. You lay out your case clearly and concisely. You tell him about the boundary stone, the theft of your land. You present your witnesses. You must convince him not only that your cause is just, but that supporting you is politically wise. Will it anger a more powerful family? Does Eric have a more influential chieftain on his side? It is a delicate calculation of honour, obligation, and power. Thorstein listens, his face impassive, stroking his great braided beard. Eric is a stubborn man, he says, his voice a low rumble, and his kinsmen are numerous. You reply that your kinsmen are also numerous, and that an insult to you is an insult to all the free farmers under his protection. To let it slide would make him look weak. This is the language he understands. It is about reputation. Finally, after a long silence that stretches your nerves thin, he nods. Your cause is just, he declares. I will speak for you at the court, but you and your sons must follow my instructions to the letter, and you must be ready to stand with me if Eric's people decide to settle this with iron instead of words. A wave of relief washes over you. You now have a powerful champion. Your case is no longer just your own, it is his. The odds have just shifted significantly in your favour. After several days of feasting, trading and political manoeuvring, a horn blast signals the formal opening of the Althing. A hush falls over the sprawling camp. Everyone, chieftains, farmers, merchants and their families, begins to move, flowing like a great river of humanity towards the foot of the great cliff, the Almanija. This is the location of the Lugberg, the Law Rock. It is the sacred and political heart of the entire assembly. There is no grand building, no temple. The Chamber of Parliament is the open air, with the sky as its roof and the ancient rocks as its walls. You find a place to stand among the immense crowd. All eyes are turned to a high point on the cliff face. From this natural pulpit, one man will address the entire nation. This is the law speaker, the Lögsögumadari. He is the most respected legal mind in Iceland, a man elected by the chieftains to hold the law in his head. He is, in essence, a living library of the nation's legal code. As there are no written laws here yet, his memory is the ultimate authority. His position is a great honour, and it's the only one at the thing that comes with any form of payment. The law speaker, a solemn, white-bearded man, takes his place on the rock. He raises his hands, and a profound silence settles over the thousands gathered below. Then he begins to speak. His voice is powerful and rhythmic, a chanting recitation that carries across the plains. His duty is to recite from memory 1/3 of the entire legal code of Iceland each year, over the course of the 3-year term of his office. He speaks of the laws of inheritance, of marriage, of theft, of manslaughter. He reminds everyone of the rules that bind them together, the ancient customs that separate them from the chaos of a lawless world. You listen, captivated. You may not understand all the intricate details, but you understand the significance of this moment. This is the one time of the year that you are not just a collection of scattered families and rival clans. You are one people, the people of Iceland, gathered to hear the law that you have all agreed to live by. The law speaker's voice is the voice of your collective identity. He is reaffirming the social contract. He is reminding everyone present that while the axe and the sword are always an option, this agreement to settle disputes with words and rules is what allows your society to function. After he has finished his recitation for the day, the formal business of the thing can begin. The courts can convene. Your case is one step closer to being heard. The day of your court case arrives. The Althing has several courts that meet simultaneously to handle the vast number of disputes. Your case will be heard by the quarter court for your region of Iceland. But this is no quiet, solemn chamber. The court is held in the open, at a site called the Domringa, a sacred circle of stones. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of spectators have gathered to watch the proceedings. Justice in your world is a public spectacle, a form of high-stakes theatre. There is no privacy, and the pressure of the community's gaze is immense. You stand with your Goddy, Thorstein, and your witnesses on one side of the circle. Across from you stands Eric, with his own chieftain and his supporters. His face is a mask of defiant anger. In the centre sit the judges, a panel of 36 men, appointed by the chieftains of the quarter. Your chieftain, Thorstein, is one of them, but so is Eric's. The proceedings begin. There is no state prosecutor. This is a private lawsuit. You, the plaintiff, must drive the case forward. Thorstein, your Goddy, begins. His voice booms across the clearing. He is a master of legal language, weaving together the facts of the case with the precise, poetic and formulaic language the law demands. He names you. He names Eric. He recites the charge and the summons, his memory flawless. Then it is your turn to swear the opening oath. You step forward, place your hand on a sacred silver ring held by your chieftain, and swear that your cause is just and your suit is lawful. Your voice must be clear and strong. Any hesitation, any stutter, will be seen as a sign of guilt, a sign that the gods are choking the lies in your throat. Next, you call your witnesses. One by one, your 2 sons and your brother step forward to swear their own oaths, confirming that they saw the boundary stone in its original place and saw that it had been moved. Like you, they must speak the formula perfectly. The content of their testimony is almost less important than the performance of it. This is a society that believes a man's word, his honour, is everything. A flawless, confident oath is seen as powerful evidence. A fumbled one is a disaster. You watch, your heart in your throat, as your youngest son speaks, his voice cracking slightly with nerves. But he gets the words right. He does not falter. You have presented your evidence. Now you must face the defense. Now it is Eric's turn. His Goddy, a lean, sharp-faced man known for his clever legal arguments, steps forward. He begins by trying to pick apart your case on a technicality. He claims that you mispronounced a word in the original summons, that you failed to call the right number of witnesses to your door. This is a common tactic. Viking law is a minefield of procedure, and a single misstep can get an entire case thrown out, regardless of the truth. The judges listen intently, debating the points among themselves. The crowd murmurs. You feel a cold sweat on your brow. Did you say it right? You think you did. After what feels like an eternity, the judges rule that your summons was valid. You have survived the first attack. Now Eric presents his defense on the facts. He swears his own oath of innocence on the ring, his voice dripping with self-righteous anger. He claims that the stone has always been in its new position, that you are the one who is lying, trying to steal his land out of greed. He calls his own witnesses, his son and a cousin, who confidently swear oaths to support his version of events. It is now oath against oath, one family's honour pitted against another's. Who is to be believed? The judges cannot know what is in men's hearts. Insults begin to fly. Thorstein calls Eric a nithing, a word for a dishonourable man, the worst insult imaginable. Eric's chieftain mocks your family's poverty. The spectators get more involved, shouting encouragement to their favoured side. The atmosphere grows more heated. This is why you and your kin came armed. You can feel the tension coiling, the delicate balance of the court threatening to tip over into a brawl. A legal dispute can become a battle with shocking speed. The judges, who are also chieftains and warriors, call for order. They are the jury, and it is now up to them to weigh the conflicting testimonies. Their decision will not be based on a cold analysis of evidence, but on a complex calculation of honour, reputation, who swore their oaths most convincingly, and which of the chieftains holds more sway over the others. The fate of your land and your honour now rests in their hands. The judges deliberate. There is no quiet jury room. They simply confer among themselves in the centre of the court circle, in full view of everyone. The arguments go back and forth. You watch your Goddy, Thorstein, arguing forcefully, gesturing, his voice a low, persuasive rumble. Finally, they reach a decision. A spokesman for the panel stands. The crowd falls silent. He declares that the court has found in your favour. Eric is guilty of the theft of your land. A wave of triumph and relief so powerful it almost makes your knees buckle washes over you. Your sons and kinsmen clap you on the back. You have won. Your honour has been upheld. But this is Viking justice. There is no police force to arrest Eric. There are no prisons to send him to. The court has no power to enforce its own verdict directly. Instead, the sentence is a fine. The court declares that Eric must pay you a specific amount of silver, a vergild, or compensation, to restore the honour he has stolen from you. More importantly, the court declares Eric a lesser outlaw. This means he retains some basic rights, but if he fails to pay the fine you are now legally entitled to collect, he can be killed without legal consequence. The verdict is not the end of the matter. It is a legal license. The court has given you permission to use force. The real enforcement is now up to you and your family. The verdict has tilted the balance of power, but the conflict is far from over. The final and most dangerous part is yet to come. Eric and his kinsmen are storming away from the court circle, their faces black with rage. They are shouting threats, calling the judges corrupt. The judgment of the court is one thing. Accepting it is another entirely. The law has spoken. but the axe has not yet had its say. This is the moment where a lawsuit can still escalate into a full-blown blood feud, a cycle of revenge killing that could last for generations. Later that day, you and your chieftain, Thorstein, along with a significant showing of your armed kinsmen, walk over to Eric's booth. This is a calculated show of force. You are not here to fight, but you must be prepared to. The entire camp seems to be watching. This is the final act of the drama. Thorstein, acting as your representative, formally presents the court's judgment to Eric and demands payment of the fine. Eric stands before his own booth, surrounded by his sons and brothers. Their hands are resting on the hilts of their swords. The air is electric with tension. A single wrong word, a single aggressive move, could unleash a bloodbath. Eric spits on the ground. "The court is filled with your friends, Thorstein," he snarls. "The judgment is worthless." This is the moment of truth. Thorstein does not rise to the bait. His voice is calm, but cold as a glacier. "The law has spoken," he says. "Pay the farmer what you owe him, or you will be a full outlaw by the next sunrise. And you know what that means. Your property can be seized, your life can be taken, and no one will answer for it. Is this strip of hay worth your life, and the lives of your sons?" There is a long, agonizing silence. Eric looks at his own sons. He looks at the grim, determined faces of your family. He looks at the power of the chieftain standing before him. He is proud, but he is not a fool. To defy the judgment now would be suicide. With a curse, he turns and disappears into his booth. He returns and throws a leather pouch onto the ground. It lands with the heavy, satisfying clink of silver. Your brother picks it up and weighs it. The fine has been paid. The tension breaks. A fragile peace has been secured. There will be no feud today. You have won back your land, and your honor has been restored. You leave the thing a few days later, the silver in your purse and your head held high. You have journeyed into the very heart of the Norse world and put your faith in its strange, violent, and intensely personal system of justice. You've seen that the thing is not just a court, but a delicate, dangerous dance between words and swords, between law and chaos. And you have learned that for the Vikings, the ultimate guarantor of peace was always the credible threat of a well-aimed axe. There are few phrases in history that sound as exciting as the gold rush. It conjures up images of grizzled prospectors, striking it rich with a triumphant shout of Eureka, Zrania, and living a life of adventure in the wide open West. It's a powerful, romantic myth. But the brutal reality for the hundreds of thousands of men who flocked to California was a nightmare of back-breaking labor, disease, starvation, and soul-crushing failure. They weren't adventurers. They were migrant laborers in one of the toughest, most poorly paid jobs imaginable. The year is 1849. You've just sold your farm in Missouri, kissed your family goodbye, and spent 6 agonizing months on a wagon train. You're about to step into the promised land of California, a land where they say gold is just lying on the ground, waiting to be picked up. You're about to learn that the only thing lying on the ground is mud, and the only thing getting picked up is cholera. Your first taste of the California dream is the city of San Francisco, but it is not a city. It is a chaotic, windswept refugee camp, a sprawling metropolis of canvas tents, flimsy wooden shacks, and half-finished buildings, all drowning in a sea of thick, inescapable mud. You have just stepped off the boat after a long and miserable journey, and the reality of your new world hits you with the force of a physical blow. The stories, the newspaper articles that you read with wide-eyed wonder back home, they left this part out. The city, if you can call it that, is a churning mass of humanity. Men from every corner of the globe are here. You hear a dozen different languages in the street. Everyone is in a frantic hurry, their faces etched with a mixture of wild-eyed hope and profound desperation. The air is thick with the smells of salt fog, wood smoke, unwashed bodies, and the ever-present stench of sewage that flows freely in the muddy streets. There are no proper roads, no sidewalks. To cross the street, you have to navigate on a treacherous path of discarded barrels, broken crates, and, in some places, the rotting carcasses of mules that have been swallowed by the muck. But the most immediate shock is the prices. Your life savings, which felt like a respectable sum back in Ohio, feels like pocket change here. You go to a makeshift restaurant, a plank of wood laid over 2 barrels, and discover that a single egg costs $1. A loaf of bread costs 75 cents. A cup of terrible boiled coffee is $1. This is a world of insane inflation, driven by a tidal wave of demand and a trickle of supply. You realize with a sickening lurch in your stomach that just by being here, you are burning through your money at an alarming rate. You find a place to sleep. It's not a room. It's a spot on the floor of a massive tent, shoulder to shoulder with dozens of other snoring, coughing men. It costs you $2 a night for the privilege. As you lie there, listening to the sounds of the chaotic city, the drunken shouts from a gambling den, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the incessant flapping of canvas in the wind, your golden dream begins to tarnish. You haven't even seen a river yet, and you are already poorer and more miserable than you have ever been in your life. This is the great adventure. This is the land of opportunity. After a few days of hemorrhaging money in the chaotic mire of San Francisco, you know you have to get to the gold fields. The diggings, as everyone calls them. But first, you need supplies. This is your next hard lesson in gold rush economics. You quickly learn that the real gold mine is not in the mountains. It's right here in the city, in the hands of the shrewd, opportunistic merchants who are selling dreams to desperate men like you. You enter a supply store, which is little more than a large tent crammed to the bursting point with shovels, picks, gold pans, boots, and sacks of flour. The man behind the counter has a glint in his eye that has nothing to do with gold fever and everything to do with profit margins. A simple tin gold pan, which might have cost 50 cents back east, is $10 here. A sturdy shovel is 15. A pickaxe, 20. He sees the desperation and inexperience on your face and goes to work. He tries to sell you a whole range of absurd, useless gold-finding machines, complex contraptions of tubes and bellows that he swears are the latest invention, guaranteed to find gold. You are not a complete fool, so you stick to the basics. A pick, a shovel, a pan, a heavy wool blanket, a cast iron pot, and food. The food is the most expensive and the most disgusting part of the transaction. You buy sacks of hardtack, rock-hard biscuits known to break teeth, bags of beans, and a barrel of salted pork, which you can already smell is on the verge of turning rancid. The prices are so high that by the time you are done, a huge portion of your remaining money is gone. You feel a rising sense of panic. You have to find gold, and you have to find it fast, just to break even on the gear you needed to find it in the first place. During this process, you meet 3 other men in the same predicament. One is a young clerk from Boston, another a farmer from Illinois, and the third a German immigrant who speaks broken English. None of you know the first thing about mining. You all realize the same grim truth. Going into the mountains alone is suicide. You decide to form a partnership, pooling your money, your supplies, and your ignorance. It's a partnership born of mutual desperation, a fragile alliance against a hostile world. You buy a sturdy tent together and a mule to carry your supplies. The four of you, strangers just a week ago, are now a company, your fates tied together. You have your gear, you have your team. Now all you have to do is get to the gold. Your newly formed partnership leaves the mud pit of San Francisco and begins the next leg of your journey, the long trek to the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. You and your partners are full of a nervous, fragile optimism. The city was a nightmare, but that wasn't the real California. The real California, the one full of gold, lies ahead. The journey quickly disabuses you of this notion. The road to the diggings is not a road. It is a barely defined trail, a river of mud churned by the thousands of wagons, mules, and men who have passed this way before you. The physical hardship is immense. Your mule, laden with your precious and overpriced supplies, struggles through the muck. Often you have to unload everything, carry it across a particularly bad patch on your own backs, and then try to drag the poor, stubborn animal through. It rains. A cold, persistent drizzle that soaks you to the bone and never seems to stop. At night, you huddle together in your damp tent, shivering in your wet blankets, trying to cook your miserable rations of salt pork and beans over a sputtering fire. There is no romance in this. It is just cold, wet, and miserable. The trail is crowded. You are part of a vast, disorganized army of gold seekers, a river of humanity flowing towards the mountains. But you notice something else. There is another, smaller stream of men moving in the opposite direction. They are coming from the gold fields, and they look like ghosts. Their faces are gaunt and yellowed with sickness. Their clothes are in tatters. They walk with a slow, shuffling gait, their eyes hollow and empty. They don't have mules laden with supplies. They have nothing. These are the busts, the men who have already failed. They are the ones who didn't find anything, who lost all their money, who caught scurvy or dysentery, and are now just trying to make it back to San Francisco to beg for passage home. You and your partners try to talk to them, to ask for news of the diggings. Most of them just shake their heads and trudge on, too broken to speak. One man stops. His hand is trembling, and he has a feverish look in his eyes. "Turn back," he croaks, his voice a dry rasp. "It's a lie. There's nothing there but mud and misery. They call it a fever for a reason. It kills you." He stumbles on his way, a walking spectre of failure. You and your partners look at each other. A seed of doubt, cold and heavy, is planted in your hearts. But you have come too far. You have bet everything you have on this. You cannot turn back. You just put your heads down and keep walking east towards the mountains. After weeks of soul-crushing travel, you finally arrive. You crest a hill and look down into a narrow canyon, a river snaking through its bottom. This is it, the diggings, but your heart sinks. It looks less like a land of opportunity and more like a fresh vision of hell. The riverbanks have been torn apart, transformed into a chaotic landscape of pits, trenches, and piles of discarded rock. And everywhere there are men, hundreds of them, standing knee-deep in the freezing water, digging, washing, and sifting. The entire canyon is a hive of frantic, desperate activity. The mining camp itself is a miserable sight. It's a collection of a few hundred ragged tents and crude shacks made of canvas, scrap wood, and mud. It has a typically optimistic name, like Angel's Camp, or Prosperity Flat, which seems like a sick joke given the squalor. You and your partners wander through the camp. The best spots along the river are, of course, long gone. Every square foot of promising-looking ground has been claimed. You see men jealously guarding their small plots of land, their faces grim and suspicious. This is a world of intense competition. Finally, after a full day of searching, you find a small, unclaimed stretch of riverbank far downstream from the main camp. It's a patch of muddy gravel and rocks that has likely been overlooked for a reason, but it is all you can get. Now you must stake your claim. There is no official government registry, no deed office. There is only the informal and brutally enforced miner's law. You and your partners cut down some saplings and fashion them into crude stakes. You hammer them into the ground at the four corners of your plot. The claim is small, barely 30 feet square. This tiny patch of mud is now your entire world. Your hopes, your dreams, and your future are all contained within these 4 wooden stakes. You have to register your claim with the camp's unofficial recorder, usually just the local saloon keeper, to make it somewhat official. But you know, the real law here is the law of possession and force. If you find gold, you will have to be prepared to defend your claim from the desperate, envious men all around you. You set up your tent on the muddy bank. You are exhausted, your supplies are already dwindling, and the patch of ground before you looks utterly barren. But you have a claim. Tomorrow, the real work begins. Tomorrow, you will start digging for gold. The first rays of dawn are a pale grey light filtering through the canvas of your tent. It's cold, a damp, penetrating cold that seems to come up from the ground itself. There is no gentle waking. You are roused by the sounds of the camp coming to life. Men coughing, the clang of a pickaxe striking rock, the low murmur of voices. You and your partners force down a miserable breakfast, a few pieces of hardtack softened in hot water, which you try to pretend is coffee. Then you head to your claim. It is time to begin. Your first tool is the most basic, the most iconic, and the most backbreaking of them all, the gold pan. You have no idea what you're doing. You've only heard it described. You take your shovel and dig up a load of heavy, wet gravel and rock from the riverbank. You dump it into your wide, shallow metal pan. Then you wade into the river. The water is unimaginably cold. It is meltwater from the snows of the Sierra Nevada, and the shock of it takes your breath away. It feels like stepping into a bucket of ice. Within minutes, your feet are completely numb. You squat at the river's edge, submerge the pan, and begin the process. It's a delicate, 2-part motion that you have to learn through feel. First, you violently shake the submerged pan from side to side. This is to break up the clumps of clay and allow the heavier materials to settle to the bottom. Gold is incredibly dense, almost 20 times heavier than water, so the theory is that it will sink while the lighter sand and gravel stay on top. Second, you tilt the pan and dip it in and out of the water with a gentle swirling motion. This washes the lighter material over the lip of the pan, bit by bit. You repeat this over and over. Shake and settle. Tilt and wash. It is a slow, tedious, and incredibly inefficient process. Your entire body aches. Your back is on fire from crouching. Your arms and shoulders burn from the weight of the pan and the constant motion. Your hands, plunged in the freezing water, are numb, clumsy claws. You do this for an hour, then another. After what feels like an eternity, you have washed an entire pan full of gravel. You are left with a small amount of fine, black sand at the bottom. You hold your breath and peer at it, your heart pounding with anticipation. You swish the last of the water around. Nothing, not a speck, not a glimmer, just black sand. You curse, dump it out, and start again. You do this all day for 12 hours until the sun sets. Your net profit for the day is 0. The glamour of prospecting has worn off very, very quickly. After a week of the soul-destroying labour of panning, you and your partners have found a grand total of a few tiny flakes of gold. Not nuggets, flakes. Barely enough to fill the bottom of a thimble. The value of your findings doesn't even come close to covering the cost of the food you are eating. You are going backwards. You realise that panning is for prospectors, for finding the first signs of gold. To actually make any money, you need to process more dirt, far more than you can with a simple pan. You need to upgrade your technology. You decide to build a rocker box, also known as a cradle. You've seen other, more experienced miners using them. It's a crude but effective machine. Essentially a long wooden box, open at one end, mounted on two curved pieces of wood like a child's cradle. Inside it has a sieve at the top to catch large rocks and a series of riffles, small wooden bars, along its sloped bottom. You and your partners pool what little money you have left and buy some rough-sawn lumber from a makeshift sawmill further up the canyon. The wood is green and ridiculously expensive. You spend 2 precious days, not digging for gold, but sawing and hammering, constructing your machine. The rocker requires teamwork. It is a 3-man operation. One partner stands at the head of the machine, shoveling the gold-bearing dirt and gravel into the sieve. Another partner stands beside the river, continuously dipping a bucket into the freezing water and pouring it over the gravel. And the third man has the most monotonous job of all. He kneels beside the cradle, endlessly rocking it back and forth with a wooden handle. The motion, combined with the water, washes the dirt through the sieve and down the sloped bottom. The lighter sand and gravel wash out the end of the box, while the heavier gold and black sand get trapped behind the riffles. It is a huge improvement over the pan. You can now process a cubic yard of dirt in a day, 100 times more than before. But the labour is even more brutal. The shoveler has to move tons of heavy, wet earth. The water hauler's arms feel like they are being pulled from their sockets, and the rocker is lulled into a trance by the endless, repetitive motion. You rotate jobs every hour, but it doesn't matter. By the end of the day, every muscle in your body is screaming in protest. You are no longer prospectors. You are factory workers on a muddy outdoor assembly line, and the machine you are operating is a crude, man-powered contraption. The work is just as cold, just as wet, and just as miserable as panning. There is just more of it. The back-breaking labour of mining is only one half of your daily struggle. The other half is simply surviving life in the camp. At the end of a 12-hour day of standing in ice-cold water and shoveling mud, you do not return to a comfortable home. You return to a ragged canvas tent, which you share with your 3 partners. The tent is cramped, it leaks when it rains, and the floor is a perpetually damp patch of dirt. This is the peak of luxury in Angel's Camp. Some men live in crude shacks, cobbled together from scrap wood and bark. Others simply sleep under the stars, wrapped in a blanket. Then there is the food. The diet of a gold miner is a monotonous, unhealthy, and wildly expensive affair. Every single meal consists of some combination of the same 3 ingredients: beans, hardtack, and salted pork. You boil everything into a tasteless, greasy mush in your one cast iron pot over an open fire. Fresh fruits and vegetables are a distant memory, a fantasy you dream about at night. This lack of nutrition has a devastating effect. You see men all around you with the telltale signs of scurvy, bleeding gums, loose teeth, and an aching in their joints. They call it land scurvy, a strange and terrible ailment that saps a man's strength and spirit. Sanitation is a concept that does not exist here. The river is your source of drinking water, your bathtub, and your toilet. The entire camp is littered with garbage and human waste. The result is a public health disaster. Disease sweeps through the camp in relentless waves. Dysentery, which the miners call the bloody flux, is rampant. Typhoid and cholera are common. There are no doctors, only quacks selling useless patent medicines at outrageous prices. You live in constant fear of getting sick. A simple fever, an inconvenience back home, is a potential death sentence here. And then there is the loneliness. The camp is almost exclusively male. It is a society of strangers, cut off from their families, their communities, their entire past lives. The mood is one of quiet desperation. The only social outlets are the gambling tents and the saloons, which are ramshackle bars selling cheap, potent whiskey at inflated prices. Fights are common. Men, driven mad by failure, exhaustion and homesickness, drink themselves into a stupor. You watch it all with a growing sense of despair. This isn't an adventure. It is a slow-motion collapse of civilization. For weeks, you and your partners work the rocker box. The daily grind is a brutal, unchanging rhythm. Shovel, pour, rock. Shovel, pour, rock. Every evening you perform the clean-up. You carefully remove the riffle bars from the bottom of the cradle and wash the collected black sand and, hopefully, gold into your pan. Most nights the result is the same. A few tiny, disappointing specks. Just enough to buy more beans and salt pork. You are trapped in a cycle of subsistence, working yourself to death just to afford to keep working yourself to death. But one evening, it happens. As your partner is carefully washing the concentrate from the day's work, he lets out a strangled cry. You all rush over. There at the bottom of the pan, nestled in the black sand, is not a flake, not a speck, but a lump. A small, water-worn, lumpy piece of metal the size of your thumbnail. It's heavy. It's a dull, buttery yellow. A nugget. The sight of it sends a jolt through you. A shot of pure, uncut adrenaline that makes you forget the cold, the hunger, the aching in your back. This is it. This is the moment you have dreamed of for a year. You have found gold. The excitement is manic. You and your partners are shouting, laughing, clapping each other on the back. For a few glorious moments, the dream is real. You are successful gold miners. The next day, you work with a renewed, feverish energy, and you find more. A few more small nuggets, and a healthy amount of coarse dust. After a week of working this one small productive patch, you decide it is time to see what your fortune is worth. You gather all the gold you have found, the nuggets, the flakes, the dust, into a small leather pouch. It feels wonderfully, deceptively heavy. You take it to the assayer's office in the main camp, a small shack with iron bars on the window. The assayer, a stern man with a jeweler's scale, takes your pouch. He weighs the contents carefully. He tests it for purity. Then he does the calculation. Your weeks of back-breaking labor, your moment of triumphant discovery, your entire California dream is worth $52. After dividing it 4 ways, your personal share is $13. You look at the small pile of gold dust. It had seemed like so much. Now it seems like nothing. It is barely enough to cover your expenses for the past 2 weeks. The electric jolt of hope is gone, replaced by a cold, crushing wave of despair. The dream has shrunk, and you are still broke. The days grow shorter, the nights grow colder. The first snows begin to dust the high peaks of the Sierra Nevada. A new, more dangerous enemy is on its way. Winter. The mood in the mining camp shifts from desperation to a quiet, creeping dread. You know that soon the river will be choked with ice. The ground will freeze solid. Mining will become impossible. The flimsy tents and shacks that provide some meagre shelter from the rain will be useless against the bitter cold and heavy snows of a mountain winter. Your partnership is falling apart. The brief excitement of finding a few nuggets has faded, replaced by the grim reality that your claim is essentially worked out. You are back to finding almost nothing. The German immigrant in your group has come down with a hacking cough that will not go away. The clerk from Boston is talking of trying to find a job, any job, in the new town of Sacramento. The camaraderie born of shared hope has curdled into suspicion and resentment in the face of shared failure. The dream is dead. You are faced with a terrible choice. You can try to stick out the winter here in this miserable camp, hoping you have enough food and firewood to survive until the spring thaw. You see the older, more experienced miners doing this, hunkering down in sturdy log cabins. But you have no cabin, and your supplies are almost gone. It is a gamble that could easily end with you freezing to death or starving. Or you can admit defeat. You can join the sad shuffling procession of broken men heading back to San Francisco. You can try to find work on a dock or a construction site just to earn enough money for a ticket on a ship that will take you on the long, shameful journey home. You look at your hands. They are calloused, cut, and permanently stained with dirt. Your back is a constant dull ache. You have lost weight you couldn't afford to lose. You came here with a heart full of hope and a pocket full of money. Now your pockets are empty, and your heart is filled with a cold, heavy resignation. This was the true nature of the gold rush. It wasn't a great adventure. It was a lottery. And you, along with hundreds of thousands of others, held a losing ticket. You have nothing to show for your year of misery, but the bitter taste of a beautiful lie. When we think of ancient Egypt, we picture massive monuments of stone, pyramids, temples, and sphinxes, all designed to last for eternity. But the entire civilization, its vast bureaucracy, its sacred religion, and its rich literature was actually built on something far more fragile. Paper. Specifically, papyrus. We see these golden scrolls in museums and imagine them as magical, mystical objects. But the brutal reality is that papyrus was an expensive, state-controlled resource created through a smelly, slimy, and labor-intensive process. A fragile medium that was constantly being erased and reused for everything from tax records to laundry lists. We are travelling back to the fertile banks of the River Nile, to a world of gods and pharaohs. The year is 1275 BC. The new kingdom is at the height of its power, and you are just a humble reed, dreaming of the sun. Your life is simple, green, and wet. You're a papyrus reed. Cyprus papyrus, one of millions growing in the vast, teeming marshes of the Nile Delta. Your world is a dense, vertical forest of thick, triangular stems, crowned with delicate, feathery heads that dance in the warm, humid breeze. Your roots are deep in the rich, black, life-giving mud of the river. Your entire existence is a slow, patient conversation with the sun above and the water below. You are part of a vibrant, noisy ecosystem. Brightly coloured kingfishers dart between your stems. Crocodiles, the silent armoured gods of the river, glide through the shallows. Hippos, the great lumbering beasts of the marsh, crash through your forest, their deep grunting calls echoing in the hazy air. This is the world as it has always been, a timeless cycle of growth and decay, of sun and flood. You know nothing of kings or scribes or gods with the heads of animals. You only know the gentle lapping of the water and the warm embrace of the Egyptian sun. But the humans are always near. You see their flat-bottomed skiffs moving through the channels, the men fishing with nets and spears. You are useful to them in many ways. They weave your stems into mats, into baskets, into ropes, and even into the light, swift boats they use to navigate the marshes. You are a fundamental building block of their civilization. But for some of your kind, the tallest and the straightest, a far more noble and far more violent destiny awaits. One day, a team of men arrives. They are not fishermen, they are harvesters, and they have come for you. Your simple green life comes to an abrupt and brutal end. The harvester wades into the shallow water, his bare feet sinking into the mud. He grabs your thick triangular stem and, with a single swift motion of his curved sickle, he cuts you down. Your connection to the earth, to the river that has nourished you, is severed. You are bundled together with hundreds of your fallen brothers and loaded onto a barge. Your journey from the world of nature to the world of man has begun. It is a journey of transformation, a violent rebirth that will turn you from a living plant into an immortal vessel for human thought. You were taken to a workshop on the edge of the marsh, a place of intense and very smelly activity. You are now the raw material for one of the most important and jealously guarded industries in all of Egypt. The manufacture of papyrus is a state-controlled monopoly, the source of a valuable export and the very foundation of the kingdom's vast bureaucracy. The process you are about to undergo is a trade secret, a form of ancient alchemy. First, you are trimmed. Your feathery head and your tough-rooted base are cut off, leaving only the long, straight, triangular stem. Then, the outer green rind is carefully peeled away, revealing the pale, white pith within. This pith is the heart of your being, the substance from which the page will be born. A skilled craftsman takes this pith, and with a long, sharp knife made of obsidian or bronze, he begins to slice it lengthwise into thin, translucent strips, each one about an inch wide. These strips, your very essence, are then laid out on a wet wooden board. The craftsman lays down a single layer of your strips, all of them parallel, their edges slightly overlapping. Then he lays down a second layer on top, this time with the strips running perpendicular to the first, creating a kind of woven two-ply mat. This is the crucial step, the creation of a cross-grained structure that will give you both strength and flexibility. Then the violence of pressure is applied. A heavy, flat stone is placed on top of the mat, and it is pounded with wooden mallets, crushing your fibres together, the natural sticky sap of your own body acting as the glue. For days, you are left to press and dry under the hot Egyptian sun, your individual strips fusing into a single cohesive whole. After you are fully dried, the final stage is the polishing. A craftsman spends hours rubbing your surface with a smooth, rounded stone or a piece of ivory, burnishing you until you are as smooth and glossy as a sheet of polished wood. You are no longer a reed. You are now a sheet of papyrus, a pale, cream-coloured and incredibly expensive piece of writing material. Several of these sheets are then glued together, end to end, and you are rolled up into a scroll. You are a blank page, a vessel, waiting for a purpose, waiting for the words that will give you your first and most important soul. You are now a finished product, a handsome, high-quality scroll, and you are sold for a considerable price to a man named Nebamun. He is a scribe, a member of the educated, literate elite that runs the vast machinery of the Egyptian state. You are taken to his office, a small sunlit room in a corner of a great temple complex. You are about to be initiated into the world of writing, the sacred words, the hieroglyphs. But the writing you will bear is not the beautiful pictorial script of the great monuments. It will be its faster, more practical cousin, the cursive script known as hieratic. The scribe, Nebamun, sits on a mat on the floor, his legs crossed, and he places you across his lap. He opens his scribe's kit. It is a beautiful wooden pallet with 2 circular depressions carved into it. One holds a cake of black ink made from fine carbon soot mixed with gum arabic. The other holds a cake of red ink made from ground ochre, used for headings and important details. The pallet has a slot to hold his reed brushes, his kalam. He dips a brush into a small pot of water, rubs it on the black ink cake to load it, and then he turns to you. The first touch of the reed brush on your smooth, virgin surface is a strange, ticklish sensation. And the first words that are written upon you are not a hymn to a god or a line of poetry. They are the dry, precise, and deeply mundane words of a legal contract. Nebamun is recording a marriage agreement between a soldier and the daughter of a local merchant. He writes with a swift, practiced hand, the hieratic script flowing across your surface in a series of elegant, abbreviated curves and lines. You learn the details of this small human drama. The name of the husband, the name of the wife, the value of the dowry, 10 bolts of fine linen, a cow, and 3 jars of honey. You record the names of the witnesses. You have been transformed from a blank page into a legal entity, a silent, official witness to a human promise. Your new life is not one of sacred mystery, but of practical, bureaucratic reality. Your life for the next several years is one of quiet and frankly boring utility. After the marriage contract is signed and sealed, you are rolled up and placed in a clay jar for storage in a government archive, a great library of legal and administrative documents. You are a piece of data in the vast information management system of the Egyptian Empire. Occasionally, you are taken out and unrolled, your text consulted to settle a dispute over the inheritance of the cow, or to verify a detail of the contract. You sit in the dark, dry silence of the archive, alongside thousands of other scrolls just like you. Your neighbours are not works of great literature. They are tax records. They are grain inventories from a provincial granary. They are the official reports of a military campaign. They are letters from a frontier fort, complaining about a delayed shipment of supplies. This is the reality of writing in ancient Egypt. It is not primarily an art form. It is a tool of power, a technology of control. It is what allows the pharaoh, a single man in a palace hundreds of miles away, to know exactly how much grain is in every silo in his kingdom, and to demand his rightful share. You feel the slow, patient passage of time. The ink on your surface fades slightly. The edges of your scroll become a little frayed from being handled. The marriage you record is now a distant memory. The husband and wife are long dead, their children grown. The contract you hold is no longer a living document. It is an artifact of a forgotten transaction. In a civilization obsessed with eternity, you, a piece of paper, are surprisingly ephemeral. But because you are made of such an expensive and valuable material, your story is not over. You are too precious to be thrown away. You are about to be recycled. After 50 years in the dusty archives, you are taken out. The marriage contract you have so faithfully preserved is no longer of any legal importance. You are now just a used piece of paper. But you are a high-quality, beautifully made piece of paper. A scribe in the temple's scriptorium, the Per Ankh, or House of Life, decides you are perfect for a new and far more important purpose. He takes you, and he begins the process of giving you a second life. He lays you out on a flat stone table, and with a damp cloth and a soft abrasive like pumice stone, he begins to wash the old ink from your surface. It is a delicate, careful process. He gently scrubs away the hieratic script of the marriage contract, the names of the long-dead couple, the records of their dowry. The black, carbon-based ink is stubborn, but slowly it lifts from your fibres, leaving only a faint, ghostly shadow of your former self. You have become a palimpsest, a document that has been washed clean to be used again. You are a blank slate once more, but not an entirely empty one. The faint traces of your past life are still visible, a whisper of your mundane, bureaucratic origins. You are then burnished again, your surface restored to a smooth, glossy perfection, ready for a new set of words, a new identity, a new soul. This constant recycling is the reality for most papyrus scrolls. It is a world without cheap, disposable paper. Every sheet is a valuable asset, used and reused until it finally falls apart. You are a silent testament to your own intrinsic worth. This time, the words that are written upon you are not the swift, cursive script of a legal document. The new scribe who works on you is a master, an artist, and the text he is writing is one of the most sacred and important in his entire culture. He is copying the spells for coming forth by day. It is what later ages will call the Book of the Dead. And you are being transformed from a simple contract into a sacred, magical guide to the afterlife. The work is slow and meticulous. The scribe uses not the everyday hieratic, but a more formal and more beautiful hieroglyphic script. Each small pictorial character is a miniature work of art. He writes with a steady, practiced hand, his reed brush moving with a silent grace across your surface. He copies the spells that the deceased will need to navigate the treacherous underworld, the magical incantations that will allow him to pass the judgment of the gods and enter the eternal paradise of the field of reeds. He uses the red ink from his palette for the titles of the spells and for any words considered particularly powerful or dangerous. The contrast between the black text and the red rubrics is beautiful and deeply symbolic. In the spaces between the columns of text, another artist, an illuminator, is brought in to paint exquisite, colourful vignettes. He paints the deceased, a nobleman named Ani, standing before the great god Osiris. He paints the terrifying weighing of the heart ceremony. He paints the beautiful sun-drenched paradise that awaits the virtuous soul. You are no longer just a document. You are becoming a masterpiece. Your creation is a commission for a specific and very wealthy man. The nobleman Ani, a powerful scribe and official in his own right, is preparing for his death, as all sensible Egyptians do. He has spared no expense in the creation of his tomb, his coffin, and his funerary equipment. And you are to be the centerpiece of his spiritual toolkit, his personal magical passport to the afterlife. After many months of painstaking work by the scribes and the artists of the Per Ankh, you are complete. You are a magnificent scroll, over 70 feet long when fully unrolled, a vibrant and powerful guide to eternity. The day comes when your services are needed. Ani, the nobleman, has died. Your long, painted scroll is carefully rolled up, tied with a leather strap, and placed inside his magnificent human-shaped coffin, right next to his mummified body. You are part of the great funeral procession that winds its way from his villa in Thebes, across the Nile to the West Bank, the land of the dead. You hear the wailing of the professional mourners, the chanting of the priests. You are carried deep into the earth, into the cool, silent darkness of Ani's newly cut and beautifully painted tomb. At the entrance to the burial chamber, the final and most important ritual is performed. The opening of the mouth ceremony. A priest touches the mouth, eyes and ears of the mummy with a series of ritual instruments, magically restoring the deceased's senses. And it is at this moment that your true purpose begins. You are there to be read, not by human eyes, but by the soul, the bai, of the deceased. Your spells are now his voice. Your knowledge is now his guide. You will give him the words he needs to pass the terrifying demons and the great judgment that await him. Your journey is over, and his has just begun. The great stone sarcophagus is closed. The burial chamber is sealed with a wall of stone and plaster, and the entrance to the tomb is hidden with sand and rubble. And then there is silence. A profound, absolute, and eternal silence. And darkness. A darkness that is deeper and more complete than any you have ever known. Your new life is a life of waiting. You lie there, in the dry, still, and perfectly stable air of the sealed tomb, next to the body of the man you were created to serve. Outside your stone prison, the world continues. The seasons turn. Dynasties rise and fall. The great new kingdom, which seemed so eternal, crumbles into dust. New peoples arrive in Egypt, Libyans, Persians, Greeks, Romans. The gods whose names are written on you are slowly forgotten. The language of your spells, the sacred hieroglyphs, becomes a dead and mysterious code that no one can read. The very civilization that created you vanishes, becoming just a memory, a legend. But you endure. The tomb is your perfect time capsule. The hyper-arid, unchanging environment of the sealed chamber protects you from your two great enemies. Moisture, which would cause you to rot, and dryness, which would cause you to become brittle and crumble. For over 3,000 years you lie in the silent dark, your vibrant colours unfaded, your sacred purpose unfulfilled, but your physical form perfectly preserved. You are a message in a bottle, cast into a great dark ocean of time. After more than 3 millennia of silence, a new sound. It is a faint, scraping, chipping sound from far away. It grows louder, closer. It is the sound of digging. The world of men has found you once more. The stone wall of the burial chamber is broken down, and for the first time in 31 centuries, a beam of light pierces the darkness. It is not the light of a smoky oil lamp. It is the harsh, bright light of a 19th century lantern. A new kind of man enters the tomb. They are not tomb robbers. They are Egyptologists. They open the sarcophagus, and they find you. The sight of your perfect, pristine scroll sends a jolt of ecstatic excitement through them. You are no longer a sacred object. You are an artifact. You are a priceless piece of historical data. You are carefully, reverently removed from the tomb and transported thousands of miles to a new, cold and damp land. In a great museum, you are painstakingly unrolled. Your fragile, ancient form is now a source of wonder and intense scholarly study. The strange pictorial language written on you is no longer a mystery. These new men have cracked the code. They can read your words. You are no longer a magical guide for the soul of one man. You are now a source of priceless knowledge for an entire new civilization. You have a new name now. You are the Papyrus of Ani, one of the most perfect and beautiful examples of the Book of the Dead ever found. Your final transformation is complete. The papyrus scroll was the software of the ancient Egyptian civilization for more than 3,000 years. It was a technology born from the muddy banks of the Nile, a difficult and expensive medium that was the foundation of their religion, their government, and their literature. For every sacred book of the dead that has survived, thousands of more mundane scrolls, the tax records, the letters, the laundry lists, have long since crumbled to dust. The few that remain, preserved by the miraculous accident of a perfectly dry tomb, are not just ancient documents. They are the voices of a lost world, silent for millennia, now speaking to us once more, whispering the secrets, both sacred and mundane, of a civilization that was built on a fragile and very precious blade of grass.